How worried are you about Houston right now?
Out of 10, my worry level is about a 3. This is still the team with the second best point differential in the NBA. They've had a rough stretch here in the last 5 games. The team has shot below 25% from downtown on over 30 attempts per game. Guys, let me give you a stat here that has never happened in NBA history, that a team has shot that poorly from downtown in 5 straight games. That to me is more make or miss league. Bad luck for them on the three-point shooting column. Jabari Smith and Amen Thompson have combined during that streak to shoot 6 of 46 from downtown. I could shoot better than 6 of 46 from downtown to give me those looks on the perimeter. I think the Houston Rockets have a little bit of growing pains here because Ime Udoka famously wants to win a championship and wants to fast track this development for guys who are 22, 23, 21 years old. Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith Jr., Reed Shepherd. Thime Udoka age range in terms of what he wants on a team. I think he wants veteran guys. He wants them to be able to play crunch time minutes and be more assertive. But when they're not hitting shots, this becomes a lot more evident that they're a super young team mixed with, of course, Steven Adams and Kevin Durant. It's a mixed mass roster here with the Houston Rockets, but I promise you, the answer isn't Fred VanVleet coming back at the end of the season. They just need to keep handing the keys to the young guys and hope that they come through with their shooting from downtown. Because, yes, I was working that game, the Blazers game, when Ime Udoka went off on the team for being mentally weak. I think mentally weak translates to just super young, and I think he wants Amen Thompson, Jabari Smith Jr., and Reed Shepherd to play like they're 30 years old rather than 20 years old.
All right, Tom, let's stick in the West and look at the Lakers, who are now on a 3-game losing skid. And I think a lot of Lakers fans have started to be frustrated with some of Luka's defensive efforts. But is this a Luka defensive problem or a Lakers defensive problem?
I think it's all of the above. I think Luka Doncic at this point in his career needs to step up more defensively. He doesn't need to be a two-way guy out there, but here's a stat for you is that in the NBA, we have these 3D camera tracking cameras all over the player tracking cameras all over the arenas, and what we can see is that Luka Doncic is the second least mobile player in the NBA on defense. Second least. The only other guy who covers less ground per minute on the floor defensively is James Harden. But if you look around the list of guys who do not move a lot defensively, a lot of them are hid on three-point shooters in the corner like Luka Doncic is. They are guys who are high usage, deep into their 30s guys like James Harden, LeBron James, and Kevin Durant. Luka Doncic is not deep into his 30s, and yet he is one of the least mobile, least active defenders in the NBA. And a lot of that is because they ask him to do so much offensively, and he's not a guy who's going to be guarding the opposing best player. That's why they have Marcus Smart on the team. That's why they have Vando on the team. That's why they have Jake LaRavia on the team. They have 3-and-D guys who are not shooting well from 3 and are not playing well defensively. So they're not 3-and-D guys currently. And that's why I think it's a two-pronged problem, is that the Lakers are built to win a championship today in theory because they got LeBron James, Austin Reeves, and Luka Doncic on the team. But the supporting cast for Luka Doncic is abysmal. Marcus Smart, Jared Vanderbilt, and Jake LaRavia, they shot 1 of 15 from the floor in the game last night, 0 for 11 from downtown. You can't have Luka Doncic on your team and have guys who can't shoot the ball. That's just, it's a non-starter. It's why the Dallas Mavericks went to the NBA Finals surrounding him with 3-and-D guys who are willing to hit catch and shoot threes from the corner and getting those kickouts from Luka Doncic. Having the ability to knock down those shots is a big reason why that Dallas Mavericks team went to the NBA Finals. The Lakers do not have those role players on the team. And so it's both, yes, Luka Doncic needs to do more defensively, be more active, and help out in transition, not argue with officials. That's been a thing for his entire career. But the other side of this is the Lakers are definitely not having the right supporting cast around Luka Doncic. And I do think they should be in the next month or so trying to upgrade that supporting cast, because right now they have a worse point differential than the Charlotte Hornets. I'm going to repeat that, guys. The Los Angeles Lakers are getting beaten by a larger point margin than the Charlotte Hornets this season. So that is something that the Lakers have to be pragmatic about, is they are not a championship contender as it stands right now.
All right, Tom. So then I keep seeing reports linking Jonathan Kuminga to the Lakers. Is he going to end up in L.A.?
No, I think he's a Sacramento King eventually, and I don't think he's the answer there with the Lakers. If you need a 3-and-D guy, Jonathan Kuminga doesn't shoot threes and make them at a high clip, and he doesn't play a lot of defense. So, no, he is not the answer on the wing for the Lakers. I do think what's really interesting about this situation is this podcast with Max Kellerman and Rich Paul. I've never seen anything like this in media, in the NBA, is maybe the most prominent player agent in the game has a podcast in which he's arguing for the Lakers to trade Austin Reeves for Jaren Jackson Jr. Think about this. LeBron's agent, who LeBron plays, is out here in the media for The Ringer, and he is saying, hey, I really think that the Lakers should trade Austin Reeves for Jaren Jackson Jr. with the Memphis Grizzlies, who, by the way, is a Rich Paul client. Jaren Jackson Jr. Triple J is one of the guys that Rich Paul has been campaigning for on his podcast. You have to remember that he has represented a lot of the stars in the NBA, including LeBron and Anthony Davis. Everyone knows that. Draymond Green. Just reading out the list for you so people at home can understand. Whenever you hear these names come out of Rich Paul's mouth on this podcast, you have to keep your third eye open and remind yourself why he's talking about them. Darius Garland, Fred VanVleet, Tyrese Maxey, Brandon Ingram, Zach LaVine. All of these guys are represented by Clutch Sports. So when you hear Rich Paul out here making trades, fake trades, or trade proposals for the Lakers, keep in mind that he represents a lot of those guys that he's talking about. So Jaren Jackson Jr. would represent, I think, an upgrade in terms of the defense, but it would be a huge cap hit. He just signed a max extension with the Memphis Grizzlies. And so, of course, when they are looking to trade Ja Morant, Rich Paul wants to be out here and saying, I want to get this guy in a winning situation. But I don't know if Jaren Jackson Jr. is the kind of vertical spacing threat, a lob threat that you would want to have next to Luka Doncic. Not the best fit, but certainly when people hear Jaren Jackson's name being in trade rumors because of Rich Paul, you have to remind yourself he represents Jaren Jackson Jr. So keep your third eye open on that one.
All right, stick there for a second then, because I wanted to ask you about Ja Morant anyway. So we've got him up on the screen. What's the future look like for Ja Morant?
A lot like what Trae Young just experienced. I think right now Ja Morant is a negative trade asset. I don't think his contract and the off-court issues, I don't think they outweigh the on-court benefits of playing Ja Morant at this stage of his career. He's a non-shooter, ball-handling non-shooter who doesn't get to the rack like he used to. His dunk rate has plummeted. His attacking the basket paint points, he used to lead the league in paint points, and now it's collapsed for Ja Morant in the paint. You just don't see him being that kind of Derrick Rose, Russell Westbrook above the rim player anymore. And a lot of that, I think, has to do with his age and the injuries that have piled up over the years. So when you look to acquire a guy like Ja Morant, you have to hope that he can dial back the clock, find that fountain of youth, and become the guy that at 22, 23 years old was dominating the league and getting into the paint relentlessly. But in today's NBA, with scoring at such a high level, you can find guys who are able to get into the paint and finish at a high level. Cam Spencer has been a better offensive player for the Memphis Grizzlies this season, far better than Ja Morant. And I think that speaks to how Ja Morant's abilities right now are far underwhelming what I think the expectation, the reputation, and the name value of Ja Morant. So for me, if I'm the Memphis Grizzlies, I am trying like heck to try to get some sort of market for Ja Morant, because at his contract, his age, in terms of how well he looks out there, he looks a lot older than he actually is. And I do think it's going to be tough to find a market for that guy with all the off-court issues, and it's going to look a lot like Trae Young's deal.
Let's stick on that for a moment then, because it's fair to question what the market for Ja Morant is. The Hawks got 0 picks in return for Trae Young. What does the market recently signal about some of these guards on these massive contracts? What is the market and the perception from GMs across the league?
Yeah, with this apron, the second apron, the first apron, the repeater tax, the way that the CBA works is it's really hard to have these monster contracts on your books and have any sort of cap flexibility. You're going to lose draft picks. You're going to lose the ability to add certain players into deals if you have a negative value contract like Trae Young and Ja Morant. Trae Young is probably the worst defender in the NBA, pound for pound. The Atlanta Hawks have had a real tough time playing with him defensively and covering up for all of his liabilities defensively. And Ja Morant is not a good defender either. So unless he's a 25, 30-point scorer, it's going to be tough for him to be able to make up that value on his contract. So Trae Young got traded for basically 2 bench guys. Think about it. He's been all-star for 3 out of the last 4 years, Caroline, and he was just traded for 2 bench guys and no first-round picks. And so I think this is indicative of just the larger currency of these type of contracts in the NBA. So Ja Morant, like if you want to have him on the Minnesota Timberwolves, good luck. But the only way you're going to be able to get him there at his contract is trading Rudy Gobert. Why would you trade Rudy Gobert if you're getting a guy like Ja Morant that needs to have a Rudy Gobert on the team? You're not trading Jaden McDaniels. You're not trading Rudy Gobert in order to match that salary number. And so I think it's indicative of how tough it is to move a Trae Young and Ja Morant. If you want to get a young player and get long-term benefits, long-term assets in terms of the contracts coming your way, good luck. I don't see it happening. I imagine he's probably going to be a Sacramento King or something like that. I keep bringing up the Sacramento Kings just because I don't know what they're doing. So if you can't project what the Sacramento Kings are doing, they'll probably do something like Ja Morant or Jonathan Kuminga. So I expect that to be more reasonable than, say, moving into the Minnesota Timberwolves.
The more I hear you talk, Tom, the more I continue to die on the hill that the best thing at the trade value is somebody you barely even knows in the league that probably actually plays defense as opposed to most of the stars that you're talking about. All right, one team that we continue to just put into the trade conversation are the Clippers, but let's be honest, they are hot. 10 of the last 12, they are on a heater. Are you buying this current iteration of the Clippers that is so hot?
No, because even as they are this hot, they're still 11th in the Western Conference outside of the play-in. The mountain is too high to climb for the oldest team in the NBA. Right now, we're looking at this team playing great with Kawhi Leonard and James Harden in the lineup, but so far, historically, that really isn't the case. We can't rely on the Clippers to continue playing at this high level when Kawhi Leonard has been one of the most injury-prone players in the league over the last few years, and then James Harden is getting deep into his 30s with a lot of miles in his tires. So I'm selling on the Clippers here just because I think this is best case scenario, is that their guys are healthy, and I think when you have James Harden and Kawhi Leonard, you're going to give yourself a chance. But I cannot, for the life of me, expect them to play 80% of the games going forward, which is what it'll take for them to make it into the playoff picture. So, no, I'm selling on the LA Clippers, despite how well they've played as of late. They're still 16-23, and I expect a lot of missed games in their future just because the best predictor of injuries going forward is whether you've had injuries in the past. And for James Harden and Kawhi Leonard, I'm selling on their ability to stay healthy enough for them to contend.
Let's stick on the Clippers and what we've seen James Harden do here. Where does he rank for you when you look at some of the best, just pure scorers in NBA history?
Pure scorers, Caroline. So pure scorers in my mind, I'm thinking about guys who are mostly focused on scoring. I think James Harden is one of the great playmakers of all time. Like, he makes plays for himself and for teammates, a nightly triple-double threat, a guy that changed the NBA in terms of those step backs. He and Steph Curry really revolutionized the way to score in the NBA, creating space, having those threes early in the shot clock, pulling up in transition, step back, sidestep threes. Like, he is a top 10 scorer all time, but I wouldn't say he's a pure scorer. I'd say Kevin Durant or DeMar DeRozan, these guys are more pure scorers because they're not high assist guys, whereas James Harden, he's going to rank up there all time with the best assist guys. And I think when you look at James Harden, he revolutionized the position in terms of being a ball-dominant, heliocentric guy who you can create so much offense just by him having the ball in his hands and going downhill, getting to the free throw line, spraying out to shooters. He definitely revolutionized the position. Now, the question for me with James Harden is he an 82-game player or a 16-win player? Meaning, regular season, James Harden is an MVP candidate, but come playoff time, I really question his ability to have the endurance to be able to play at that level and having so much on his shoulders and so much creation, shot creation, and playmaking for teammates when he is at this stage of his career. And I do think that James Harden is one of the best regular season players of all time, and that's where that stat shows. 9th, and he's approaching Wilt Chamberlain. Congrats to James Harden on this, and I do suspect that when it's all said and done, we will look back on James Harden in his legacy in today's NBA and talk about how he revolutionized what it meant to be a scorer in today's NBA, coming off the bench for OKC and then becoming one of the greatest scorers ever. What a career for James Harden.